بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسول الكريم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask him to send peace and blessing on our Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We continue in the book Ahwaalul Quboor of Imam Ibn Rajab Al-Hanbali rahimahullah on the horrors of the grave and the conditions of its people. This section we started off a few weeks ago with the ayat of Quran, and then the hadith related to that, and other hadiths related to the condition of the people, what happens when the people go immediately into the grave. And in Imam Ibn Rajab Al-Hanbali rahimahullah, he has put a section here on various incidents that have been recorded, and it's interesting the way they recorded incidents. Something happened at the washing of the body or at the grave, right? Something happened that's out of the ordinary, but then with each one, if you look at it, it's narrated like a hadith almost. A chain of narration is given. There's some stories that we don't know where they come from. Like who started it and who, so even these stories or incidents that happened to Sahaba, Tabi'in, and other people afterwards. So even if you see Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, his book Al-Furqan Bayna Awliya Ar-Rahman wa Awliya Shaitan, the criterion, the differentiation between the awliya, the friends of Rahman and the friends of Shaitan. So there's a section about the karamat of awliya, it gives examples. But if you look at each example, there's like a sanad, a chain of narration with it. Who narrated? This is something that happened for real, and here's the proof of it, because who narrated it? The same people narrating the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the same narrating those incidents. So sometimes there's stories, and this time is the worst time, because people change the story. I don't know why they call it Chinese whispers. There's a game, apparently it's a game, so I never played it. So like you whisper in somebody's ear. I don't know why it's called Chinese. Maybe there's different names for different countries, and then that person says it next year and it goes around. By the time it comes back, it's something else. Someone asked me about the food at a certain restaurant in Melbourne, and I said to him, well, so-and-so Sheikh has checked it out, and he's a reliable person. He's an Imam of a masjid, and he's a good person, he's pious, practicing, and he's checked it out, and he said it's okay. So based on what he's saying, so it went around, and then it came back to me and it said that, Sheikh, I heard that you're doing halal certification for this restaurant. See how I've got a stamp of halal certification, and so no, I said like the Imam of that masjid, who is like literally about 1 kilometer from the restaurant, he checked it out. That's what I heard from someone who heard it from him. So I know who heard it from, which sheikh heard it from, who told me, and so I gave him my chain. But the way from me where it left, I don't know how it came out. Some other random guy came, he goes, you're doing halal certification. So people fill in the gaps themselves. So these incidents I mentioned, they're not like a part of Sharia per se, like in terms of whether you accept them or don't accept them, but they state the obvious, which is already mentioned in the hadith we mentioned last week. So this is to bring it closer to home. If these incidents mentioned, they're reliable, Allah opened on some people certain aspect of the grave, Allah opened them, they heard something or saw something, then it's worth narrating, because it strengthens what is already verified by the hadith. This is more verification of what is mentioned in the hadith. So the first incident mentioned that Thabit bin Qais bin Shammas, he became shaheed in the Battle of Yamama. The Battle of Yamama is one of the battles during the Ridda wars in the Khilafah of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, and is a big one. As nearly the Muslim al-Kadhab, the Muslim the liar, who claimed to be a prophet in the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was killed by Wahshi, and then he was decapitated by Abu Dujana radiallahu anhu. And it's a long episode, you could say, of what happened during all these tribes that became murtad and left Islam, and how they were dealt with by Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So he said that when we put him in his grave, we heard. So he gives a chain of narration. All these stories I mentioned, there's a chain of narration, which book it's mentioned it, who mentioned it, who narrated from who. So these are all verified by very senior imams and narrators that are reliable for hadith as well. That he said that when you put him into the grave, we heard him saying, all of us heard him saying, from the grave, Muhammad Rasulullah, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar al-Shahid, Uthman al-Rahim, and we looked at him and he's dead. And we heard these words from the grave. Another narration mentioned that when Ibn Abi Dunya has mentioned his book, he's got a book called Man Aasha Ba'd al-Maut, who lived after they died. And and Khalif al-Bazzar and Khalim al-Tahan and Hussein bi. So one of the people that was killed in the battle against Musaylama, and because we heard from his body when they're putting in the grave, Muhammad Rasulullah Abu Bakr Siddiq Uthman al-Lin al-Rahim, the gentle and the merciful Uthman. Another narrations is mentioned that one of the narrators, he said that my brother died, and when we put him in the lahad, so lahad, the shiq is a grave that's like it's the graves that we have is shiq, it's like it's straight down, and then something's put on top to make the part of the grave. And lahad is it's like an L shape. So what you do is you put the body in Medina Munawwara. Those who have been to the grave, you'll probably see this, and you see inside the grave, you see like a wall is built like with unbaked bricks, and then you put another person to the other side and so forth. But it's like an L shape. So he said, when we finished making that grave, and people left, I put my head to the grave, and I heard a very light voice saying, and I knew that it was the voice of my brother, and he said Allah, and then someone else said to him, "Fama deenuk, what's your deen?" And he said Islam. How is this possible? Well, anything is possible. It's not possible for me and you. It's possible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah allows certain things to be seen or heard. If Allah allows it, then who are we to say that this cannot happen? So it happens even today as well. But it's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's almost like a secret, but Allah allows that person at that point that he needs to hear this or know this. And maybe by recording the book that other people know it as well. It's mentioned another narration that a man died, and he had a brother, and he had his very weak eyesight, and he said that when I put my head to the grave, he said, I heard a voice from inside the grave, Man Rabbuk, Man Nabiyuk, who is your prophet, who is your Nabi? And I heard the voice of my brother, and he said, Allah Rabbi wa Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam Nabiyyi, and qala akhir, I heard the other voice saying, Fama dinu, qala Islam. In other narrations mentioned that I did not see the likes of, Abu Mughira narrates his narration, that I did not see the likes of this certain person, Ibn Imran, that when he was buried, I heard in his grave saying, La ilaha illallah. And someone saying to him, La ilaha illallah, then he repeated, La ilaha illallah. The next narration is that as a book called Dhikrul Maut, the remembrance of death. He's quoting another book, and it's got a chain of narration for this story, this incident. He mentioned about and he talks about which sheikh it is and his brother, and he used to sit with the sinful people, young people who are committing fasiq. They don't pray, they don't, those guys are the people, they didn't practice deen. So he used to go sit with them, and he used to give them da'wah, he used to admonish them, ya'idu, that he used to sit with these people, and he used to admonish them. And he died, and he said, when we put the bricks, that L-shaped grave, so we were putting the lahad, that we were making the wall, and he said that, I don't know why I had a feeling to check or something, make sure I feel like I forgot something. And because I moved the brick, when I looked inside, I could see that it was, as far as the eye can see. And I heard, astaghfirullah azim. Yeah, because as far as the eye can see. And then he said that, and he was in the middle of that space. I returned the brick, and then I went to his wife to ask him, what did you do? And he said that when he heard the adhan, heard the muadhin giving the adhan, he said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he said that, and I bear witness to what you bear witness. Because the muadhin is saying, Ashhadu, I bear witness, because I bear witness to whatever you bear witness. The next incidents mentioned that he has that, because I prayed a janazah, the narrator mentioned that I prayed janazah in Kufa, and when I entered the grave to fix up, and as I was there, then I removed one brick, and he goes, all of a sudden, he goes, I was at the Kaaba, and I was doing tawaf, and it's as though that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made it for him, like simulation for him of that. I think it's in this book, maybe coming later, that people will be given things to enjoy like sort of a preview is given to them before. In this book, inshallah, will come later on, some people that he wanted to be a Hafiz al-Quran and never got to do it, and really wanted to do it. He said Allah appoints an angel. Some riwayah mentioned that he will die as a non-Hafiz, he's resurrected as a Hafiz al-Quran. So you don't have to get into madrasa and sorry, Sheikh Hamza, he's a Hafiz al-Quran. You have to work so hard. So you just want it and you'll get it, inshallah. If you want as much as him, inshallah, then so they'll wake up as a Hafiz al-Quran. Or that that an angel is appointed and the angel teaches the person till Qiyamah. And some people saw, like in dreams, some shaykh or somebody pious, what happened to you? He said, Allah knew that I love reading books, so Allah made a whole city of books for me. Right? So what's in the grave is Barzakh. It's a sample of what's to come in Akhirah, which is mala, in Jannah, mala ayn ra'ad, no eye has seen. So it's like a prelude, a preview of the rewards that people will get. So for this person, it was like made into one of the ulama, famous ulama. I heard this myself. He said his grave, because when they looked in the grave, he goes, they were digging as they were coming out. It's usually the last guy coming out sees these things. He said that I saw that he was praying. He was in salat. Now, how, why, whatever, these are mysteries. Don't go to, doesn't change anything Sharia. You still have to pray 5 times salat, you still have to fast Ramadan, you still have to give your zakat, you still have to do hajj, you still have to follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all the teaching. It doesn't actually change the Sharia in any shape or form. But it gives you an insight maybe, or a glimpse of there is so much more to come. And the reality of what's to come is like this. These incidents maybe is to bring these Imams and mention that is to maybe give us a little glimpse of from the grave. Sometimes Allah opens a window or understanding or experience for whatever reason. Like these are mysteries. There's a hikmah obviously behind it. It's not just there for everybody, because human beings, if something is there, we exploit it. We'll make a theme park around it or something. If you go to a certain grave, something's going to happen. We'll make a theme park. There are theme parks we've made. If you travel through the Muslim world, you'll see some. I don't know how to explain. Everyone's nodding because everybody's got one in. Country, Sina Zainab. That's like so for the Egyptians know what I'm talking about. In Pakistan, we've got our theme parks. It's sort of like a theme park around the grave, because you're going to go and you're going to kiss a certain step or something, and you're going to get something. People try to fulfill their hajat and so forth. So anyway, that's what happens when so many karamat of that wali is told. I mentioned, one Shaykh mentioned this beautifully. He said, we talked about certain wali of Allah. He's a friend of Allah, real, genuine, alim or pious person or salih or a great person of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And his life was amazing, his a'mal were amazing. And, they did something amazing. And then, instead of doing what the amazing things he did, so we'll go to his grave, in his lifetime, he was mustajab al-dawat, he's make dua and dua is accepted. Now people try to go to the graves and to fulfill their needs. Because so many karamat of his were mentioned, those miraculous things that happened in his life was mentioned so much. The yaqeen moved away from Allah onto that person. Now the people think they can fulfill their needs, especially simple people who are good people, but and they say, well, he's got a special link to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he probably does because he was a pious person. But the thing is that we there's a Baba, we call him Baba, the grave, he in our country, I don't know what you call him, but he's there, it's good business, if you sit there, it's a good business, you don't have to do much and you can have a good career, but at the same time, it's excessive, it's gone beyond limits to the point of, we don't have this problem here because the cemetery closes at 5 p.m. So it's controlled. It's good the Australians are controlling the non-Muslims, because at least they have what time is it closed, Sheikh?
About 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, alhamdulillah, there's nothing, you can do nothing at night time.
In the winter, I think 5.
Even better. Jazakallah khair. So when I tell the grave stuff, I look at Muhammad Izzat. I look at him because he's the funeral director. But anyway, the last narrations for today. One narration. I'm just trying to avoid reading the whole chain of narrations, like who narrated from who. He said, one of the persons said, I dug the grave, and we dug 2 or 3 graves. And he said, at the end of it, he said that these people turned up on horses, 2 people, and they looked at each other and said, Uktub. They stood above the graves, there's 3 graves. Uktub, qala ma aktub, qala farsakh fi farsakh. Farsakh is a measurement, it's a Persian measurement, parsang in English. It's about 5 kilometers. So 5 by 5 kilometers. Then he said, then the next grave, Uktub al-Maktub, Qala Maddul Basar, as far as the eye can see. Right? His space in the grave, how is that decided? So like a little insight is given into from this narration, that there's actually a whole process, the whole world of malaika. Allah doesn't need the malaika, but sometimes to bring it closer to our mind so that we can understand. These things are little glimpses are given. So we accept there's azab al-qabr. We accept the details. Like we have to make, Ya Allah, protect us from the azab al-qabr. Make dua for that. Now the details of azab al-qabr are mentioned, some riwayat and so forth, but the reality is beyond our mind to probably comprehend. And the second said, then he turned to the third grave, because the one where I was sitting, like he's digging the graves. He said, Uktub qala maktub qala fatr. Fatr is like this. This is this is a shibr. This thing is like that between the sababa, between sababa ibham, the thumb and the index finger. So it's that much space. Like the grave is squashed that much. That person, Allah protect us from that. And the last incident that's mentioned here, and similar sort of similar incident where it talks about the how big the grave is made for the person. So we hope, inshallah, that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make light, nur in our grave, perfume in our grave, that we see the winds of Jannah, breeze of Jannah blow into our grave. There's a whole system in Jahannam and also in Jannah as well. There's a whole system in the qabr. There's a whole system in this dunya. There's malaika descending with every raindrop. There's malaika responsible for death. There's malaika. We can't see it, it's in the ghaib. There's a whole system of malaika. Allah doesn't need the malaika. We don't wish. We believe that Allah is the one who benefits and harm. But He made a system that which mentioned in the Quran and the hadith Rasulullah taught us, that we understand that behind this, what we can see, there's a whole unseen system that we don't. That is that what is in the ghaib, but the malaika themselves, they also need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not like independent or thing. They're also under the amr of Allah. But for our understanding, that when you understand with every raindrop, there's that malaika bringing down, that Allah, these are happening with the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for rizq, for death, for so many malaika, they point for rain and so forth. So many malaika that are appointed for different jobs and so forth, responsibility. But it doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them the power to benefit and harm in themselves without His decision. Or He has not given that to any of the makhluk, not even the Rasulullah, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Whatever Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam or all the Anbiya alayhi salam, even the malaika, the mu'jizat, the miracles that happen on the hands of the Anbiya, is still done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The karamat of the awliya is still done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever happens in the universe is by the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our existence is by the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq that we live such a life that our grave becomes a garden, as the hadith mentioned, a garden from the gardens of paradise, not a pit from the pits of hell. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum. Subhanallah.